We gather this hour.
We gather this hour.
We gather this hour.
We gather this hour as people of faith.
As people of faith.
As people of faith.
As people of faith.
With joys and sorrows.
With joys and sorrows.
With joys and sorrows.
Gifts and needs.
Gifts and needs.
Gifts and needs.
We light this beacon of hope.
We light this beacon of hope.
We light this beacon of hope.
Sign of our quest for truth and meaning.
Sign of our quest for truth and meaning.
In celebration.
In celebration.
In celebration.
Of the life we share together.
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 We share together.
We share together.
We share together.
Yes.
So I'll start with a poem from Nayyirah Waheed. The poet writes, "Men give birth to children, to longings, to dreams they must hide, their stomachs, their uteruses, their hungers, their softness, their cravings for touch. To be a man is the thing that closes their light and eats their eyes." I love this poem, as it speaks to me of the social injuries of being a man in our culture, and particularly the complexity of being a father, of which I am both. And then again, perhaps I am neither. Today is Father's Day, and like Mother's Day, it's a day of complex and sometimes conflicting emotional connections. For myself, I like Father's Day both for a moment to contemplate my own relationship to my father in all its complexity and all its joys, and to reflect on my own fatherhood with all its complexities and its joys. So I thought today I might reflect with you a little about the arc of my own fatherhood, not to offer it as a kind of heroic success story, which it's not, but more as a way that we might find a bit of mercy and grace in the complexities that emerge from all our relationships. The poet writes, "Men give birth to." When my children were toddlers, whatever they were drinking was referred to simply as juice, no matter whether it was actual fruit juice or water or milk, whatever. We just called it juice. And in the logic of a child, then whatever I was drinking was referred to as daddy juice. And in the mornings, that juice I was drinking was hot, an important safety distinction. Daddy didn't drink from a sippy cup, and the contents of his beverage could cause injury, or at least an unpleasant surprise if spilled. Daddy juice hot referred, of course, to my coffee. But in our household, the phrase began to be a kind of coded language for play. You see, on occasion, I would take my daughters to the local park so they could play on the playground. And on the way to the park, I'd often stop by the local Starbucks to get daddy juice, hot, which I would then sip while sitting on the bench and watching my children climb and swing and slide. This routine, of course, was not lost on the girls. And whenever they decided they wanted to go to the park, they wouldn't ask me directly. They would ask, "Daddy juice hot?" Knowing that if I agreed that a cup of coffee sounded good, they would get an hour or so of playing in the park. This little manipulation worked every single time. When my eldest daughter was born, I left my nascent career in architecture to be a stay-at-home parent. The decision to do so came at the end of a series of if-then statements. if we are to have children, then one of us should stay home, or perhaps more accurately, could one of us stay home? And if one of us stays home, then we have to live on one paycheck. If, then. But perhaps that's a cold way of looking at the choice that we made as a family. As the poet writes, men give birth to children, to longings, to dreams. It seems just as likely that there was a longing in my soul to be a man standing behind the swing set, pushing with one hand and holding a cup of coffee with the other. When my kids were a bit older, I began my ministry training. And within that, a new identity unfolded. I was called the preacher daddy in training. The in training was always in parentheses. Preacher daddy in training. And this strange and wild shift in my life's arc worried me, not for what it would bring for me. That was in fact enticing. It was an opening of light in me that I had learned to hide. It was part of a narrative that begins with the simplicity of Daddy Juice Hot, of realizing that the simple acts of presence may be all we really need to offer as fathers, as mothers, as parents, actually just as human beings. That simple act of presence. But still, I worried. I knew that the preacher daddy in training path would mean a substantial disruption to my children's lives. My presence to them would be diminished as I turned to focus on my formation and my eventual ministry. I worried that my children would feel abandoned by the guy watching them play in the park. But perhaps it wasn't my watching them that was the most important thing. Perhaps it was them watching me. Men give birth to longings, to dreams. Beyond presence, I have learned that one of the greatest gifts we offer our children is in becoming our authentic selves. They see the light that opens within us when we stop hiding our hungers, our softness, our cravings for touch. They will see the light that arises in us when we pursue those things that call us, the things that are yearning yet to be born in us. All our children, all our longings, all our dreams. And when they see that in us, no matter what our relationship, be that father, mother, grandparent, mentor, friend, our children hopefully learn and discover that they never need to diminish their own light, never need to hide themselves in order to be something the world expects them to be. In my fatherhood, I have moved from Daddy Juice Hot to preacher daddy in training to my current identity, Gregory. That is, of course, my name. And while some may think that being called Gregory by my children is somehow disrespectful, I do not agree. I find it truly endearing because I know it to be offered in love as an acknowledgement of who I am, not the role I play. It also gives me the space, being called Gregory also gives me the space to give birth to my children, my longings, my dreams. It offers me a playground where I need not hide my stomach, my uterus, my hungers, my softness, my cravings for touch. It allows me to be a man who need not close myself to my light in order to be a man for my children. I need only be Gregory. There's a running narrative in my family, kind of a running joke. Often when my children were younger, they would ask me a question, usually about something they had heard and seen or didn't understand. And I always found their questions fabulous. And I would try to answer them as fully as I could with all the subtleties and nuances that I had learned in my life. It turns out, though, that the fullness of my responses often exceeded the questioner's patience and attention. These responses became known as the long answer. I'm kind of famous in my family for the long answer. Of course, the kids learn to manage my proclivity for the long answer by prefacing their questions with a request for the short answer, and always holding open the option for the long one if the shorter one was unsatisfactory. The poet writes, "To be a man is the thing that closes their light." And I think perhaps that is the short answer to the question of fatherhood, falling into the trap of what a man is expected to be, devoid of dreams, devoid of longings, of hungers, of softness. The long answer is much more complex. It is the answer that arrives when we seek out and live into our authentic lives. It's not the answer of a moment. It's not the short answer, but the answer that is given as we learn to live our truest life. It is a long answer. So my prayer for you, for all of us today, is that we live the long answer of our lives, that you forego the roles that our culture wants to assign to you and instead unfold into that which you have given birth to, that you show the world your stomach, your uterus, your hungers, your softness, your cravings for touch, that you open to your authentic light, that you know that our children are watching you, and from your life will learn to live their own long answer. Amen, my friends. And I love you. And may we live in blessing.